Having a good data maturity scale, especially for marketing, can really help you understand where you are right now and where you want to be. So I'm going to go over 4 steps in a data maturity scale we've created here at Anvil that I think is pretty helpful to understand like how you can kind of move between them and the advantages you can get at each level. So let's just look at the actual scale itself real fast. So we'll jump into it. So the scale, I know there's a lot here. Underneath me is the foundational analytics stuff. So this is like measurement strategy. These are the base things of just getting your data in a good place. From that, we go to diagnostic analytics, which is some really, really cool stuff, and you can really start to exploit things here. So from left to right is sort of the maturity. So you go from the foundational all the way up to predictive things where you're using machine learning and a lot of automation there. And then on the Y scale, the up down, you got the competitive advantage. So each step forward, you're going to get an advantage there. Even the foundational stuff can be big leaps and forwards against a lot of your competitors that really aren't following through those. The other thing too is sort of like if you jump from one, if you jump into diagnostics without doing foundational analytics, you can do that. But I think you're going to get a lot more out of it if you go from one to another. And even if you find out, hey, we're just not going to be doing, BI integration, that's fine, but it's good to explore that and learn that you whether or not that's an advantage for your company or not before you move on to the next level. So let's start with these foundational analytics. So to me, foundational analytics is measurement strategy. Like, what are you measuring? Because why does it actually matter to your company? You can measure a lot of stuff. When you come to a website and all your different marketing channels, there's so much out there. But what actually matters and what can you collect and use in an effective way? There's nothing worse than having all the data in the world, but you don't know what to do with it. Any worse, you don't even trust it. So going back there and saying like, here is what we actually want to do. Let's go back and then figure out what is the data, the minimum data we need to make that and start working with it right now. Because then you can build your stakeholder dashboards, which kind of tells, hey, here's what's going on. To me, a dashboard is really sort of like a car dashboard. Are we going fast enough? Are we running out of gas? Things like that to know what behavior do we need to change to get to where we need to go. And then, of course, the foundational stuff is technical stuff. There's a lot of technical implementation at a foundational level. It's always important to keep track of things of how you want to connect up your different data sources. But all these things kind of go back to your measurement strategy, and really everything forward is a measurement strategy, which is what really matters to your company and how you're going to move forward. If you could only do one thing, I would recommend do that measurement strategy because it's going to have the most bang for the buck. It's going to take you from nothing to something, and that's really awesome. Once you get really in a point where your foundational analytics are, you've sort of squeezed that as much as you can, and you feel like the return is not as high as it is, it's a good opportunity then to start jump up. And of course, the sooner you can jump up, the better. And that's why I also say foundational analytics, you kind of want the minimum you need to start running, and then you can kind of take it from there. And you can always go back and add things as you need, but you realize that the more things you add, the more people you're going to need. So jumping to the next step is diagnostic analytics. And this is the cool stuff. Everybody likes to do it. A lot of companies get into it, especially if you're on the, say, finance side or other types parts of your organization. They're usually already into this, right? So they're exploring the data. Maybe they already have business intelligence for all their kind of technical stuff. Getting that into marketing is super important. So BI integration really is looking at saying like, hey, we have Google Ads, we have Facebook, we have our Google Analytics, and maybe we even have a back-end transactional database that has like our sales. How can we find a way to connect, create keys between these different steps so we can say an ad on Tuesday led to a sale on Friday, and how we can say, okay, we spent $8 here and we made $1,000 there. That's great. We spent $80 here and made $0. How can we fix that? But without that end-to-end view, you're really going to suffer and never really know really what's going on there. So BI integration is great. The next step out there is sort of like hypothesis testing. There's a lot can be in here. One of the most common we see is sort of CRO testing, A/B testing, and multivariate testing on websites. So this is really cool stuff where if you get to your measurement strategy in a good place and you've started playing with your data and exploring it and you're saying like, here's some key things we want to look at, then go jump into that testing and say like, hey, we're going to test these buttons, we're going to test this landing page, we're going to test how the cart works. all that stuff is so critical and is really putting the data into power instead of just being like gut decisions. You're really trusting that you can learn from hypothesis and grow your organization. And so it gives you a whole new avenue of a way to discover things beyond of just like what you know and a lot of smart things and a lot of smart decisions you made, but these are additional decisions you can discover based on things that you would have never thought. So that's really cool. Once you're really good at diagnostics, or let's say, hey, we tried hypothesis testing, it doesn't fit our organization, we're too slow, we're too cumbersome. I see that a lot with large healthcare organizations. Maybe it's good to jump up to that next phase and say, hey, we've kind of squeezed, we kind of at diagnostics, we do a lot of exploring and understanding things. But the next thing is sort of automating stuff. And I think automating any sort of repetitive task, especially when it comes to like dashboards or reports that are just sort of like the same thing over and over, reporting or setting those automations, but also in the BI. So one of the things we've done in BI is say, hey, when someone comes in and makes a purchase and say makes a phone call, we set up that automation all the way through, and then make a phone call and they make a purchase. We can actually push that data back into Google Ads and say, hey, this phone call from Tuesday led to a $1,000 sale. And that is very, very helpful for Google Ads to now say, hey, I'm going to find more people like that because that was a great sale, and we spent $5. Let's find more people in that with those specific features, or maybe that specific time, or whatever they're interested in, whatever Google can kind of optimize their models to better predict who's going to be able to spend that next $1,000. And that's super awesome. And that goes in that next phase, is this passing the data from system to system and automating that and creating that loop of interesting things happening in your marketing channels, and being able to identify, did this actually convert, and then pushing that back and saying, like, let's make our marketing smarter automatically, not waiting for humans to come and interact with it. So we've done some really cool stuff here. And if you got to this phase, you are crushing it. You're awesome. You are a killer company. Although if you've done any of these phases, I'm super proud of you. But the last phase, I think, is sort of getting you the predictive stuff. And this is awesome. But once again, I don't recommend coming here until you've kind of at least explored some of this stuff, because the cost can be pretty high. So we do a lot of like machine learning stuff where we say, let's do lead scoring, or let's do clustering, where we say, let's look at all of our different customers and group them together and say, what are the particular attributes of these customers, and how can we message better to them versus this other group of customers to say, they're buying these particular types of cars for these particular reasons, these other people are buying certain cars for other reasons, and then we can customize our marketing in very specific ways. Other things are predictive stuff, is looking at trends and patterns over time and say, like, we're here now, we expect to be in this range in the future, so how can we adapt to that? How can we say, hey, we're going to need more product, or we should advertise this service more because it's going to be driving a lot of business in the future. And the last sort of thing is going back to the automation and combining it with the predictive stuff. So if you could say, hey, we can predict whether or not this customer is going to convert. Let's say if they're not going to convert, or this is a higher difficulty, what can we do to sort of put them into another bucket and put them into our marketing automation? Say they got a low score on whether or not they're going to actually purchase our product. Let's do an analysis on them and do some other predictive tools and say, like, maybe they're in group A that might want a coupon, group B that wants to actually talk to someone or whatever, and being able to go back and then take those difficult leads and actually convert them at a higher rate. And so you can see that there's a lot of value there. But once again, if you haven't done those previous steps, you're sort of jumping the gun of some really cool stuff you can do with the exploratory analysis, the BI integration, and just understanding what's going on from your stakeholder standpoint, saying, like, oh my gosh, we need to spend more money on Facebook because it's really profitable, but we're hardly doing any business there. So learning how you can go through that scale is super duper important. So I want to thank everyone for listening today. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to learn more about cool stuff like our scale here. And thank you very much.